Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and the episode one, the first episode of the Big Blue restoration. This has been something I've been dying to crack into ever since I got it, obviously. But the big thing is having the actual cabinet in the first place. Never really thought I was going to be able to find one. If I did, I thought it would be actually in worse shape than what you see right here. And I know that's a big claim because right now it looks not good. What, Fox, what's going on? Everything's blowing apart. Well, the last time you saw this cabinet, I brought it home, I debuted it, I showed it off, and kind of gave you my diagnosis on some of the things, some of the issues that I saw right off the bat. Some of those are accurate, some of those weren't. Some of it was worse than I thought, some of it actually not quite as bad. And knock on wood, I was able to get over some of those issues. What issues were they? What am I talking about? What's the current state of Big Blue 3-player AVP as it sits right now? Besides being all over the place, let's go ahead and answer some of those questions, look at all the individual pieces right now.
So let's start with the control panel, the thing that takes all the abuse on every arcade cabinet. Now at first glance I thought I was going to have to replace the entire top of this control panel, but after I peeled back the overlay I thought, wow, this wood is in really good shape. And also I didn't want to have to go through the trouble of having to route a recess for these metal joystick plates to sit inside of and sit flush. That would have been a real pain. There is a little bit of damage on the corner, but I think I can just repair that a little bit later. So let's go ahead and start by disconnecting all the controls, and do yourself a favor, mark all your switches before you just take everything off. I like to use multicolored electrical tape just to keep all my buttons straight, and then I'll take the time to also label my joysticks and their orientation, and then take the whole thing out as like an assembly. And then when it's time to reconnect all your wires, it's just a matter of plug and play, point for point, and it makes life a little bit simple. Trust me, at the end of a long project, the last thing you want to have to do is fight with wiring to figure out which one goes where. So with all the controls out of the way, you can get a better look at what the control panel overlay should look like. Less yellow and more gray and blue. I wanted to point this out because when we put the new overlay on, it's going to look dramatically different, but it is closer to the original. And also taking these original overlays off is not quite as easy as you'd think. It's not just one piece of vinyl. There's many different layers underneath. This blue separating from the wood was kind of difficult to make happen. It kept separating between the different layers. So it took a little time. I tried a lot of different methods, but heat is definitely your best friend when it comes to this stuff. Don't try to mechanically scrape it. You're just going to end up damaging the wood. And if you leave big holes or divots in that wood, that's something you're going to feel every time you play.
So let's go ahead and just jump right to the biggest question mark of the last video, and that is the control panel itself. Man, I thought this was really going to be in bad shape, something I was even going to have to go ahead and just remake from scratch. That's actually not the case. So what you're looking at is the top, obviously. This is where your control panel will be facing you. The buttons will be facing up. And the reason why this is just a little bit different than some of your other control panels is because you got this metal plate that the joystick actually bolts to right on the bottom side. You can see there's 4 studs that actually fasten this to the wood, and then there's 4 additional studs underneath that the joystick fastens to, the IL stick that I have. Of course, those controls are over there waiting to be installed. But some stuff had to be done to this panel, obviously. The top wasn't in terrible shape. You had a corner over here that was kind of messed up. Most of the damage was actually on the bottom. But I was able to kind of reshape this and reshape the bottom with multiple steps in the process. Let me show you what it looks like right now. Can't really see it, but I am going to insert a video showing you some of the steps that had to be taken to get this thing where it is today, which I think is pretty much, exactly where it should be. Reshaping, refilling that took a lot of time, several different steps, sanding, add some more filler, sand, add some more filler, rinse and repeat. But it got it to where it is now. Up top, there wasn't that much to do really, except for there was a little bit of an issue, something I noticed when the old overlay was on top, and that is sort of this gap between the metal plate that we just talked about and the actual wood that surrounds it. There was a gap. This hole isn't exact. This routed recess in the wood isn't exactly a perfect 100% match with this metal plate. So you had a little bit of a gap here, here, and here. This side was actually pretty tight. It was sort of the same thing for all three plates. So what I did is did some initial sanding with about 80 grit sandpaper, kind of knocked down this edge, and then I filled it with glue and let it all sit, just wood glue, right? After that was done, I took a razor blade and kind of scraped off some of the excess, and then just continued to sand all this down to make it buttery smooth, pretty smooth. It looks and feels pretty good. You shouldn't really feel that once the overlay is on. You really shouldn't be able to feel a big gap like I felt before. It's really distracting when I'm right here playing and your hand is resting right there. So that was definitely the part that had to be fixed on all three portions. Once that was done, the woodwork was done, all the filling of the little cracks and stuff, refining of the edges. I hit the whole thing with some shellac because I wanted this to be a sealed surface in preparation for the new artwork, and also to keep this from deteriorating in the future. Not too much going on with the Marquee other than getting my stainless steel bolts like we talked about in the last video. The nuts were missing completely, and the bolts were actually 5/16. I went with 3/8, so a little bit bigger. Problem with that though is these holes aren't, that's like exactly 3/8, so it makes it really tight. And if you leave all the holes the same, it's going to be difficult to slide everything on. So what I did do is I took one hole, this one right here, and I drilled all those holes up to a 1/2 inch to give us a little bit of slop, but still keep all the other three holes the same size. So it keeps everything fairly centered, giving you just enough play on this one hole here to kind of get everything lined up. But other than that, nothing else really done. I did take out some of these small screws here and repaint them, so that looks good. We didn't have any molding on top to hold the Marquee artwork in, so that is ordered and coming. And of course, one thing you got to do, besides hit the light, is change out your fluorescent tube with an LED bulb, which is what I did here. Keeping, dropping screws, but keeping the wiring all stock so nothing's going to be chopped up. Just cut the existing wiring harness that was up here and then made my wiring connection inside the fixture itself. So this is going to plug into the stock wiring harness.
Now the top of the control panel was only one part of the control panel assembly, which is another cool thing about these big blue cabinets. The control panel is kind of modular, so the whole thing sort of bolts on depending on the game that's inside the cabinet. This one is a wider one because it has the 3-player controls for Alien versus Predator. So to get this thing really looking good, I meticulously went over all the seams and filled it with wood putty and did multiple sanding passes because all the vinyl that was originally on this I had to peel off. It just wasn't in good condition and I couldn't find a good suitable replacement. So I definitely wanted to paint this. I did seal the inside just like I sealed the top and the bottom of the control panel itself. And then I had to select some paint, so I started with a gray primer. And then I got this paint mixed up at my local Home Depot. It should be a good match. We'll see later on in the video. Now luckily the cabinet was in excellent condition, but the bottom needed some attention. So we're going to go ahead and pull these levelers, these feet on the bottom. They're going to be replaced with casters a little bit later. And while I was down here, I want to go ahead and fill in some of the split wood with wood glue in some places and wood putty in others before we clean this whole thing up and give it a nice fresh coat of paint on the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and paint the coin door while I'm at it. And if you want to protect the finish of your stock cabinet, make sure you take the time to mask everything off and cover it. I'd hate to get some black on that beautiful big blue color. All the effort's going to be worth it. I know it's a little bit tedious, but trust me, when you want a good finished product from top to bottom, you have to do this. Now it's time to remove the stock power supply. While it is working, there are a few things that I want to fix. So let's talk about the two things that are broken on this power supply. The socket that the power cord plugs into has two broken mounting tabs. So we're going to swap this out with a piece that I bought from Amazon. It's going to be a direct replacement. The wires are going to plug into the stock location. Should be good to go. And then the cooling fan is completely locked up. So we're going to replace it once again with another replacement that I found on Amazon, and we should be in good shape.
Set up an apartment complex. Media Facts, live daily shows, trusted voices, conservative media, groundbreaking, culture-shaping, premium content, hit moving to see Fetterman dragged out of the ceremony in handcuffs by Secret Service for dressing that way. Even better, he should have been refused entry to begin to an event like that dressed in their gym clothes. But Fetterman is given special treatment. He's a United States court. Either he's mentally handicapped or he's a colossally arrogant prick who thinks the most basic.
So at this point, I'm feeling pretty good about the color match from Home Depot. Now, nothing's going to be perfect, and these paints tend to dry a little bit lighter, a little bit darker. I'm not exactly sure, but we're at the point of no return. So let's go ahead and give this a couple heavy coats and then move on with the project. Okay, so the moment of truth. Let me know in the comments section, what do you think about this color match? It's not 100% perfect, but for me, it's close enough. Now let's go ahead and move on to finishing this control panel by installing the control panel overlay. This is a great piece. Once again, no yellow to be seen except for the actual Capcom logo. That's where the yellow is supposed to be. Installing this after so much time spent on this cabinet, it really is like you can just see the finish line, and it's just so incredibly satisfying. Getting the artwork on, fussing over all the little details, trimming just a little bit here, a little bit there to get the T-molding fitted just right. And once you get all this done, it's time to attach it to the cabinet. I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of wood glue on all my screws. It acts as kind of like Loctite, but instead of going into metal threads, we're going into wood. It's just going to help retain these fasteners. Remember, this wood is 30 years old. And there she is in all of her big blue glory. I'm finally able to say that I have a Capcom Big Blue 3-player Alien vs. Predator cabinet in my collection, and I couldn't be happier about it. I love the way this cabinet turned out. Now, there are a few changes from stock. The game posters on the side would not have been there originally. It just would have been a generic Capcom logo. And then the instruction card on the control panel, that is new old stock, but I'm not sure if you would have seen it on the control panel or on the monitor bezel. Of course, the big question is which big cabinet is the biggest, and it looks like Big Blue just edges out Neo Geo's Big Red. And when the lights go down, I get to show off a signature feature of this particular model of Big Blue cabinet. It's those 3 Marquee pod support rings that make the Marquee look like it's floating above the cabinet. It's just a little touch that allowed this cabinet to stand out in any arcade. So let me know what you think about this restoration project in the comments section below. Do you remember playing Alien vs. Predator back in the 90s? What was your favorite 3-player arcade game of all time? Thanks so much for stopping by and checking out the channel. Y'all have a blessed day, and I will see all of you next time.